Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. So the Biden administration is opening up about $1.15 billion in broadband funds through USDA's REConnect program. That application window will be opening up very soon. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Uzzi here with Broadband Deployment News. So this was actually some news from a few weeks back, but I've been kind of busy and was on vacation and other things. So thought I'd cover this today and maybe go a little bit into the funding opportunity document just to cover a few things. And there's a few changes from recent USDA REConnect programs. So you see here, Biden-Harris administration to begin accepting applications on September 6th for USDA REConnect program. And this is round 4 of that funding. Round 3 actually was late last year, and I think it was in July that they started announcing the dollars that are going to be coming from that program. So they're just now announcing those that are going to be getting that money. So this is the application process that will start on September 6th. You see here the department will begin accepting applications on September 6th to expand access to high-speed internet for millions of people in rural America nationwide. And that's really what this program is for. This is for rural America. It is through the USDA, so the Department of Agriculture, because a lot of that's farm area, but it doesn't have to be a farm. It's just that it needs to be a rural area, which they define those areas if you read up on USDA. And they've made some changes in this as well, so we'll look at that. So USDA is making the funding available under the REConnect program. So this REConnect program has been going on a while, which received new funding from President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law. So this new funding is an additional $2 billion, I believe, is coming from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that's adding more money to the USDA program. The department will begin accepting applications September 6th for up to $150 million in loans, up to $300 million in loan grant combinations, and up to $700 million in grants. So that's the way USDA has traditionally worked, is that you've got these 3 choices. You can do a straight up loan, you can do kind of a loan grant combination, or you can get 100% grant. And with the grants, there's matching funds, which we'll see. So the application deadline is November 2nd. So September 6th through November 2nd. And it says here they've made several improvements to the program for round 4, allowing applicants to serve areas where at least 50% of households lack sufficient access to high-speed internet. So that would be an area where if you identified an area where 50% of the homes lack sufficient access to high-speed internet, which is defined in this latest round as 100 by 20. Anything less than 100 by 20. So that is basically saying anything that is underserved according to the Infrastructure Act, this money can go towards that if 50% of the households fall in that. I believe prior to this it was 90%. So they've dropped that down to 50% to kind of expand the areas that can be covered there. Then they added a funding category of projects where 90% of the households lack sufficient access to broadband or 100 by 20. And for those applications in that category, no matching funds are required now. Waiving the matching funds requirement for Alaska Native corporations, tribal governments, projects proposing to provide service in colonias, and they describe what that is, projects proposing to serve persistent poverty counties, and projects proposing to provide service in socially vulnerable communities. So they've added some of that kind of digital equity stuff in there to try to make sure that everything's equitable. All awardees under this funding round will be required to apply to participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program. So that is that $30 subsidy and $75 on tribal lands for folks that are qualify for that, low-income folks. So that's the announcement from USDA. I'll link to this. It mentions in here that you can find more information on page 47,690 of the Federal Register. But I'll link to this. And you can click here to get right to that. You don't have to scroll all the way down. And actually, I pulled that up. So here it is, page 47,690 of the Federal Register. And down here towards the bottom is where this starts. So you see USDA, RUS, REConnect Program, Funding Opportunity Announcement. This FOA is to announce that it's accepting applications for the second funding round in this year, 2022. And again, it's utilizing funding provided under the IIJA. September 6th, as we mentioned. You have to do that through the online portal, and you have until 11:59 a.m. Eastern on November 2nd, 2022. There's an address here where you can submit the application. And then there's the contact information. If you have any general inquiries about that, you can see that here. Say here, it's a Federal Register, so it's in columns. Just to highlight a few things. So among other things, those rules, there's lots of rules. So among other those things, those rules require that the applicant demonstrate that the project can be completely built out within 5 years from the date that the funds are first made available. The project is technically feasible. All project costs can be fully funded or accounted for. So obviously you have to have a plan for how you're going to do this and how you're going to fund everything and that you're going to pay for everything. Facilities funded with grant funds will provide the broadband service proposed in the application for the composite economic life of the facilities as approved by RUS or as provided in the award documents. And if facilities funded with loan funds must provide broadband service through the amortization period of the loan. So if you get any loans on this, you've got to provide that for that entire period of the loan amortization. Under this FOA, loans, grants, and loan grant combinations will be made for the costs of construction, improvement, or acquisition of facilities and equipment needed to facilitate broadband deployment in rural areas. And it talks about some of the more liberal policies here that the Biden administration's put in place with a lot of this broadband stuff. You know, like you have to make sure that it's climate friendly. They actually do help pay for that. As you look through here, there's different amounts of funds that can be used for that in addition. So, and then mentions the sufficient access for broadband, any rural areas in which households have fixed terrestrial broadband service defined as 100 by 20. So in other words, anything less than that, again, the underserved category under IIJA would qualify those areas. And again, it's 50% of households is the minimum that you have to hit there. So system requirements, facilities proposed to be constructed with award funds must be capable of delivering 100 meg symmetrical to every premise in the proposed funded service area. So that, again, it's got to be anything under 100 by 20, and then you have to be able to provide at least 100 by 100 in that area. So that's going to mean, for the most part, fiber. And then, you know, fiber obviously can expand past that. So they know that if they're saying a minimum of 100 by 100, they're going to be able to get on most of these well above that. We've got, again, different categories. 100% loan has an interest rate of 2%, so that's very favorable. 50% loan, 50% grant. That's set at the Treasury rate for remaining amortization period at the time of each advance of funds. So as that goes on, that might change. 100% grants, there's a matching contribution equal to at least 25% of the cost of the overall project. 100% grant for Alaska Native corporations, tribal governments, etc. As I mentioned, and as it mentioned in that press release, no matching funds will be required for those. Projects, again, here, projects where 90% of the households lack sufficient access to broadband. So if you've got an area where 90% of the households, so I guess you can define those areas however you want, then those do not require a matching fund, matching funds. Maximum and minimum funding amounts, so the 100% loan, the maximum amount that can be requested in an application is $50 million. That's a lot of money, so this would be larger operators. 50% loan, 50% grant. The maximum amount that can be requested in an application is $25 million for each, for the loan and for the grant. It's a 100% grant, the maximum amount, $25 million. However, if it's a FAR level 4, the applicant may request up to $35 million. So what's a FAR level 4? So go back up here. So these are your FAR levels, and basically, what does that stand for again? Hold on here. Frontier and remote area codes. So these are your very remote areas, and they're showing like frontier and remote or FAR zip codes, and this is FAR level 1. So you can see all of these blue areas are FAR level 1. So there's quite a few areas, you know, depending on where you are. Obviously, a lot of areas out here, you know, here's Georgia where I live, and there's some areas down in here, some areas in upstate, New York and Maine, I guess, and whatnot. And then you got FAR level 2, and you're going to see the blue gets a little smaller as you go. This is FAR level 2, FAR level 3, and you got FAR level 4. So your number of blue areas or zip codes gets reduced. And there are, for FAR level 4, there's tells you what that would be. So FAR areas consist of rural areas, if it's level 4, that are 15 minutes or more from an urban area of 2,500 to 10,000 people. 30 minutes or more from an urban area of 10,000 to 25,000 people, or 45 minutes, indoor 45 minutes or more from an urban area of 25,000 to 50,000 people, and 60 minutes or more from an urban area of 50,000 more people. So these are obviously rural areas where you might have a small town nearby, but it's going to take you more than 15 minutes to get there, or it's very small, that kind of thing. So that's how you can rate that. And in those areas, as mentioned, if it's for Area 4, you can get up to $35 million to serve that. Minimum amount that can be requested in any REConnect application is $100,000. So you can't request $25,000. You got to request at least $100,000 as a minimum. Eligibility, eligible service areas, at least 50% of the households in the PFSA must lack sufficient access to broadband. Again, that's a change where they reduce that amount so that you can look at serving more areas. Areas receiving or under consideration for other federal funds, this is interesting, are eligible for REConnect funding as long as an entity has not received final approval to receive other federal funding to construct terrestrial facilities, providing at least 100 by 20 in the proposed funded service areas as of September 6, 2022. So as of the date that you'd be, the final date for submitting your application. It says here, with respect to RDOF, final approval for this FOA means an RDOF awardee's long-form application has received final approval as ready to authorize or has been authorized to begin receiving support. Now, as I reported on last week, I think it was, the FCC came out and said Starlink is not eligible for RDOF and LTD broadband is not eligible for RDOF. So that opened up a lot of areas. So there could be some areas now that rural providers can look at and say, wow, well, this was going to be RDOF. It looked like maybe somebody was going to get this money, but now they're not. So you can go after this with these USDA funds. Plus, there are 3 other in the top 10 winners that have not been announced that they have received approval. And that would be Starry Broadband, I think is it NextLink, and the Resound Networks. There's a couple of wireless, I think really pretty much all 3 wireless providers now have not received anything. So if there might be a ready to authorize for 1 or more of those coming out before September 6th, which I think then would negate those areas, or maybe it has to be authorized. What does it say here? REConnect funding, as long as the entity has not received final approval. Final approval might be authorized because the ready to authorize comes out from the FCC that says, okay, we're ready to authorize these guys. Then those companies have to submit a letter of credit and a bankruptcy letter before then the FCC comes out and say, okay, you're now authorized. And they're supposed to submit that paperwork within 2 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see if the FCC tries to get these last ones through prior to September 6th, or maybe they don't. Maybe they don't, and then these areas will be open to anybody to go ahead and do that. So we'll have to see what happens there. Applicants submitting a project to serve an area in which an entity has already received final approval for other federal funding must explain in the application why REConnect funding is being requested and why RUS should provide additional funding, as funds must not be used for duplicative purposes. So you're not supposed to take RDOF money or ARPA money or anything else like that, any other federal money, and apply that to an area and then say, okay, I'm going to get USDA money and apply that to the same area for the same things. You can't do that. But they're saying maybe if you have a specific reason and it's not duplicating the process, not overbuilding, then maybe they will take that into account. And then pole attachments, I thought this was interesting. So pole attachment fees associated with the construction funded under this FOA are eligible for funding throughout the 5-year construction period. And that includes the cost of pole replacement. That's also an eligible expense. So a lot of times that's the case when you start to do walkouts in this plant and you find out, you could be the owner of the poles and you might say, wow, we got to replace 50 poles because we don't think we can add more facilities on top of that. Or it could be that you have to go get pole attachments. Maybe you're you could be a private provider and you want to get pole attachments from the local city or from a electric co-op or something like that, or the power company. Then if that pole needs to be replaced, then those costs can be eligible there. And then let's see here's the ACP. So again, they need to participate in the ACP. And again, that's that $30 subsidy that certain individuals can qualify for let's say low-income individual, they can qualify to get a $30 subsidy. I didn't see anything here about having to offer a low-cost program, which is something that's in the IIJA, where every provider has to offer a low-cost kind of tier. And a lot of times they're trying to get that at $30 so that somebody who is on ACP can get free broadband. I didn't see anything about that in here, but they do need to participate in the ACP. So there you go. So again, this was announced maybe a couple of weeks ago, but you still got time if you are interested in submitting that application. You've got till September 6th. And it does look, like I said, like there are lots of areas that are now opened up. So if you want to, maybe what I'll do, I'll see if I can find something that shows all of the areas that LTD broadband and Starlink will now not be serving, because that could be an area that's wide open to service providers now, because those are areas that originally looked like they were locked up by RDOF, and now they're not going to be. So, and actually, as I really thought about this later, I've mentioned a couple times I thought Starlink was kind of locking those areas out, but really it isn't, because the IIJA or the BEAD program says that satellite is not considered reliable broadband service, and therefore is not something that would be showing up on the map as a reliable broadband service or as a served area. Even if they were able to provide service there, it would not show up as a served area. So thanks for joining me. If this was helpful, please give me a like on the video. I always appreciate that. And go ahead and subscribe if you're not subscribed. Click the subscribe button, click the little bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye-bye.